before, maybe Raphael, I'll get you, can you just give us a background on who you are and what you've done before you started EZee Assist?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. Raphael Rajan. I'm one of the co-founders of EZee Assist. We've built an AI support and ticketing platform that's purpose-built for the franchising business model. But before any of that, I'm an industrial engineer. I went to Georgia Tech in Atlanta, very much a process and systems thinker in my DNA. Process nerd is probably the right way to say it. Worked in business process re-engineering for a number of years, and then spent about a decade in consulting with firms like Deloitte, PwC, KPMG. I purposefully left out EY. I think that was just unacceptable, but then I went on to do a brand strategy firm. In that time, did a lot of tech transformation work for global industries, so pharma, public sector, education, you kind of name it. And a lot of what I built at EZee Assist with my co-founder stems from just a deep obsession with knowledge management and just a deep pain that I continuously felt while executing a lot of large-scale transformation, where the thesis around knowledge management for decades has been centralization, right? Everyone's building the next SharePoint, the next Notion, but I think we all know any organization that we've been a part of, regardless of how well you centralize data, you're still asking where that file is, right? Is this the right version of the document I'm supposed to use? And access to that knowledge is always a pain. And so that's what I set out to solve with this, and I think we'll get into that.
Well, why don't you tell me about the consulting period? Like, what was the big takeaway that made you want to do a startup and that you applied to starting a startup?
Yeah, look, in any transformation, knowledge is a critical part of that success, right? You're looking at documenting process, codifying procedure. You want to capture that, disseminate it for staff to follow and succeed. But in the process, you have all of this tacit knowledge that people have that during a transformation project, a lot of people leave. You're losing that tacit knowledge, doesn't get captured, but that's paramount to success for any organization. So how did I see organizations solve this, right? Spend a lot of time and dollars in centralizing data. It's this belief that if you have all of your data in a single hub, magically people will find the right information at the right time, utilize it, but it's just not how it works, right? So I found myself advising a lot of organizations over and over again, and for a long time I was trying to build a better SharePoint, right? And I think Notion did a decent job of that, but there's just still such a burden of support around it. So I was grappling with that problem.
So you're grappling with this problem, but you're still consulting firms. Why did you leave the consulting path to start a startup?
Well, that's a whole other story, right? You spent 10 years in consulting, and I was frankly burnt out to an extent, just going project to project. But the real burnout came from the fact that, similar to your story, I wasn't building something for myself, right? I was building continuously for others. And a lot of what I built ended up on shelves on a exec's cupboard and never really got implemented, right? So a burning desire to actually build something, get it into market, didn't know what that actually looked like for a lot of years, so I was doing a lot of side of the desk evening things, weekend things during my consulting career, but never could build the momentum, right? When you're building side of the desk, sure, you're learning, which is critical, and I actually built a deep relationship with my co-founder, who we eventually quit on the same day, and we're building EZee Assist. So all of that was good, but I would get outcompeted by the market. At one point, I was building a process mapping tool to automate what Visio would do, but then a RPA revolution happens and you're obsolete, right? So had this burning desire to do something for myself.
So you're in a career, you're doing side of the desk trying to solve problems, you're not getting anywhere. You've got one of your co-founders, I know you have two co-founders right now. How do you give yourself permission to leave the track and not make it a side hobby? And was it only yourself, or was it you had to get permission from your wife? And so tell us, how do you make that leap? Because I think a lot of people try to do stuff on the side, they get frustrated, but they never make that leap. So what was the impetus? How did you get there?
Yeah, it's a lot of things. I think having there's a lot of lot of wisdom out there, right? Don't work with your closest friend, and it's a recipe for disaster in a co-founder relationship and all of that. I actually think you should question those types of notions and go a little bit deeper in terms of what does working with a friend really mean, and have you had the tough conversations before jumping into that. But Shrey, who's a co-founder, we met at our MBA 10 years ago. We know that we've been doing this side hustle thing for 10 years, and it really hasn't gained the momentum. So it was conversation with Shrey to say, we've been doing this, are we really going to do this, right? And so the two of us kind of coming together and saying, we've got to make this leap. But when we did make that leap, I had my wife and twin toddlers who were 2 years old, a boy and a girl. During the peak of the pandemic, we were locked in the sky. That actually helped a lot, right? Because it suddenly gave me purpose from two fronts, right? One, you see that the world could change like this, and the thing that you've been thinking about and the short life that you have, it kind of pushes you. So I had that kind of a push in that environment, but my meta purpose then became my kids, right? Because I had these two little ones that are looking at me, and I wanted to make an impact for them, and so very much a joint decision. We had to do some really big trade-offs, right? My wife, Gia, she's a talented graphic designer, and she worked in the advertising space, and we had to have those tough conversations about making this leap. What does that mean for our family and the things that we want to do with the kids and the growth? And she did take a step back, and I couldn't have done it without her making that kind of a decision. So yeah, a lot that went into that moment, but eventually it just, it felt right in the moment. The market was also moving insanely fast, so I felt like if I didn't do this now, I'm again going to get outcompeted, and that all converged.
So you decided to make the leap. You're worried about being outcompeted. Your co-founder is another MBA grad who's not technical. How'd you find your third co-founder?
Yeah, so that's, we were fortunate that Shrey worked for an incubator in Toronto called Antler, phenomenal resource to the community. If folks are trying to build, look into that program. Great kind of off-ramp where you're able to connect with other fellow founders that are trying to validate ideas really rapidly, and get it to market with some potential pre-seed funding attached to it, right? So we knew that we're building a deep tech company, and we needed a technical mind that's going to be able to see the vision out. And you can't be a deep tech company without a CTO that's kind of riding along that vision. So we were looking for that. Our path to finding Gabe, who's our co-founder and CTO, was Antler, right? And so we went into the program recognizing that we did need that missing piece to the puzzle. We had very clear ideas, not only about what we were looking for from a talent perspective, but from a culture perspective. So that was a big part of what, Shrey and I had the benefit of 10 years, and going through tough conversations and ups and downs and failed side hustles, we really needed to make sure that somebody that's building with us had that, same kind of ambition, same type of drive, same ability to kind of take on the tough times and see it through. And we were fortunate to find that with Gabe through Antler.
Okay, so slowly building this. So you've left, you found your co-founder, you're now starting a company with the idea that you want to work on. How'd you go from being a consultant from a mind to someone that had to execute quickly? What was the mental shift there? What was the big change from being in professional services to being a founder?
Honestly, lots of unlearning that I had to very rapidly do, right? Like in consulting, the reality is it's a precision game. You're trying to build the most MECE framework. You know that from your past, Alex, but you're perfecting the slide, you're perfecting the tone on every header on the slide. It's that game. Whereas in building startups and just how fast things change and move, and the real-time customer feedback that we're getting, the learning for me and the unlearning almost was, with startups, I really had to get into the mindset of get it to good enough, but do it fast enough that you can course correct, right? And that, we just had to immerse ourselves and throw it and learn, because a lot of what we ended up doing early is, I could have done it faster if I just didn't take that consulting approach of needing the perfect framework or perfect deck. And a lot of what ended up working for us is just throwing things at the wall, doing a very quick sprint around it, seeing what worked and iterating. I did have a cheat code though, because Shrey, my co-founder, was part of the ecosystem, right? So he's been at Antler, Creative Destruction Lab, and had seen 500 plus startups. And so we leaning in on that relationship and trust and saying, okay, I'm going to trust your way, and let's see how this goes, was an important part of allowing us to accelerate.
So I guess you knew you wanted to do knowledge management systems. You knew that SharePoint and every other effort before hadn't worked. And you said now you're just throwing ideas or doing a bunch of quick testing. How do you even know what to test first? And how do you know when something's working?
Yeah.
And maybe give an example where you got traction.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, in 2022, when generative AI and LLMs took the shape that they did, we did have a bit of an aha moment, right? Because I have been obsessing about this problem for a while. I've been looking at it as, okay, it's centralization, but how do I do better centralization? And suddenly the world changes where access is now a framework, right? If I didn't look at it as centralization of data, but instead access to data as the problem that I'm trying to solve, now things flip on the head, right? What if I made it as simple for any staff member in an organization, as simple as just text messaging what you're looking for, and you get what you need? Do you care about how it's organized in the back end? So we had that one eureka moment that came up, but very quickly we're like, okay, well, who would actually care, right? And we did the nerdiest thing possible. We're Rotman MBA grads, if anyone's from Rotman or any MBA. We went to Rotman. We sat at a whiteboard. We drew a little 2x2 matrix. On the y-axis, we said, okay, let's think about every industry or business model possible where knowledge is a core part of how they operate and succeed, right? Because one of the things that bugged me for a long time is like, anybody I ask, is knowledge management important? They'll say yes. But then you ask a CXO of that enterprise, a consulting org, a law firm, or whatever, is this a top 10 priority for you this year? No, it's not. So it's like, okay, where does knowledge really matter to the point of success for a business model industry? Some of the traditional ones, law, healthcare, consulting, do come up high, but franchising as a business model emerged really high, right? And we had no background in franchising. We had a couple of friends who were becoming franchisees, so that was the extent of knowing that they had very complex documents and training videos and things that they had to go through. So we said, okay, this is interesting, and as we dug into it, we learned more, right? Franchise businesses, they're in the business of creating clones of themselves, right? How do they do that? Their knowledge. The operating system, the ops manuals, the training videos, the procedure statements, the compliance documents, all of the stuff that franchisees really need to succeed, but access is really hard, right? Data is spread across 8 different platforms. So we're like, okay, this is interesting theoretically. Now on the x-axis, what impacts knowledge within an organization? So we started to look at different kind of parameters, but 2 that stood out were attrition rates. So if employees and people are leaving the organization constantly, you're losing tacit knowledge. And the other one is business models or industries where training is a critical part of success. And in franchising, again, 9 promotions a year, new compliance processes, et cetera. So we started off as a really theoretical high that we now had to go validate.
So when I think franchises, like I think QSR.
Yeah. Who thought McDonald's, right?
Yeah, everyone thinks McDonald's, but apparently it's a much bigger industry.
Much bigger.
Everything's apparently franchises. How did you get someone to take you seriously from an industry that has, doesn't think about, I don't think it's technology first. When you're a startup coming out of, without any customers, how did you get your first customers?
Yeah, I think with a lot of humility, right? We've always been problem obsessed, and that helped us in our journey. And the fact that we were not from franchising, I think, was also a good thing. Although there's a lot of talk about founder market fit with the problem in industry, being outsiders, we really had to go and figure this out really fast. And we got creative, right? What was the quickest way that we could go and validate whether this hypothesis around franchising, which, by the way, one of the first lessons I learned is franchising is not an industry, it's a business model. There's 90 industries that use franchising, right? Everything that you can think of, from hotels to retail to QSR, of course, but home services, all franchising. And so the quickest way that we could think of was literally think about the communities in Toronto. There's franchise expos that happen almost every month. So we posed as franchisees, right? We said, we need to learn. So we went to 2 trade shows, one at Toronto Met and one in Mississauga. And we posed as franchisees, went booth by booth, and we asked a very simple question. If I become a franchisee of your system, how do you support me? Right? And time again, we got the same answer. First, we have all of this tech. We have a knowledge system, a learning system, an FMS, a CRM. It was acronyms galore. But you look around the trade show floor, and the raw age of a North American franchisee when they buy into these systems is 55 years old, right? They have young staff, they have new immigrant staff, tons of questions as they set up and run the system, but 8 different platforms that they need to access when they need the information in that moment. What's the next best alternate we found out was people, right? But the ratios aren't great. You're paying a 6% royalty for support, but the ratio of support person to franchisee is 1:50 as a brand scales. That gave us some instinct around that there's this homogenized problem, and then we just hustled. We sent 500 LinkedIn cold messages to franchise CXOs, A/B tested a couple of blurbs, and we got 60 meetings in 3 days, cold, right? And that started everything for us.
I want to fast forward today to give some context. How many franchise companies do you have as customers, if you're happy disclosing that?
Yeah, of course. We've just hit 50 franchise systems. We came out of... Thank you.
Yeah.
We came out of stealth about 18 months back, and we did stay in stealth. I think that was our best go-to-market strategy, was not to go to market. We had 4 pilot customers from those first 60 calls. We obsessed about the problem with them. We iterated rapidly. We got some early investment through that pilot iteration. And then after coming out of stealth, 50 franchise systems, about 3,400 franchisees.
Yeah, and to give some context here, can you give some of the industries or examples of your customers? Because everyone's going to still think McDonald's if we don't clarify this.
Happy to. I'll give you some of the ones that we have and a fun one I was just telling Alex about. So 28 different sub-industries within those 50 brands that we've signed on. 11 major industries. Home services is massive. Everything from window cleaning to carpet cleaning to blinds installation to roofing to gutters. All of that is franchised, massively growing. Parking lot line striping can be a 120-unit franchise in North America. We have WSI, which is a digital consulting agency, which is a franchise. QSR, of course, food service, restaurant, etc. The craziest one is one that I'm hoping to sign is a crime scene cleanup franchise, right? And they're one of the fastest growing in the U.S. So I'll leave that there. So quite varied.
I'm kind of scared to know what their knowledge base is like. So it's been 18 months. You've gone basically from 4 design partners to 50 customers. I think you've also gone a couple product lines. What's been the most surprising challenges so far?
Well, look, I think needing to iterate constantly is paramount, right? We had a AI agent solution, and we talked about chatbots already. They exist. But the challenge we quickly realized is that the deeper you get into it, the product roadmap evolves rapidly, right? The customer feedback loops that we were getting, we quickly understood that almost equally as important as giving that instant support to the franchisee was the analytics that the franchisor is seeing. So we had to be nimble enough in that moment to recognize and say, oh, in essence, we're actually going to be taking on Zendesk very quickly, right? The AI is as good as the data that we were ingesting, and we had integrations into all of the data, which is great, but that was only 60% of all the questions franchisees had. So quickly being able to realize that we need to handle that 40% and have the entire plumbing of support taken care of to win in this space and truly get engagement, we've essentially taken on Zendesk, Freshdesk, Zoho Desk, and built out a ticketing system in the back end that loops the human in, that's able to then learn from that human's ticket resolution and make this more scalable, right? But what's been really hard is being nimble, because we have a roadmap. We want to be the operating software, the Jarvis to the franchisees, Iron Man, that you can do anything on the tech stack through EZee. But the customer feedback and the feature requests tactically is actually the hardest thing to do, because you're constantly needing to reprioritize, fix bugs, and try to execute a roadmap.
Two more quick questions before I open up to the audience. Sure. With the AI, what is the unrealistic expectations your customers have, and how do you deal with it? So that's the first.
Yeah, the unrealistic expectations is that, I mean, it started off a couple of years back that it works out the box and it's going to be perfect and all of that good stuff. But we mitigated for that through change management. I think one of the things that we do really well is we do a bit of a white glove onboarding and take the time up front to really onboard every franchisee and implement it directly with them. It doesn't hurt gross margins too much. I would recommend doing it, because that did 2 things, right? One, it allowed us to set expectations and train folks on what they should expect from the AI, which helps a lot. but yeah, the trust barrier is very fickle, right? You get one bad answer and you've potentially lost them. And so that's why the ticketing system that loops the human in when the AI is unsure, erring on the side of caution, right? Even if we find the right data, but it's 80% confidence, we'll caveat it. If it's 60% confidence based on our algorithm, we'd rather just send them to a human, let the human take care of it, and we'll learn from that and have a better shot of earning that trust later. So just building those thoughtful workflow loops helped us overcome some of that stuff.
Cool. And one more question before I open to audience. You have from what I know, you have a distributed team. What's the biggest, and I think distributed teams are popular 3 years ago, 4 years ago. There's now a big push to have in person. So what has been the biggest advice you have to making a distributed team work?
Culture from day one, like talk culture, talk what's your core values, what are the 3 things, start with 3, maybe you get to 5 over time, but what are the 3 things that you really value as a co-founder team in terms of how you're building the organization, communicate it, reinforce it every opportunity. It does take practice in terms of figuring out the cadence, so we have a weekly stand-up where we do a very, very transparent, top-down, talk about everything to every member of the team. It's not engineering in a silo and sales and product in silos. We're talking about how our pipeline is looking, where are we at, what are the things we've experimented, more importantly, where did we fail and what do we want to go, and empowering everyone to kind of have the autonomy to build, right? And of course, stock options in the early stage empowers everybody in the organization to be bought in. And so, yeah, creating that culture up front, reinforcing the values has been really helpful. And then trust, right? You need to set some accountability for folks and let them run. Micromanagement does not work in a remote kind of setup, and we do very practically. We do an offsite as well, right? So we bring folks together, make sure that we.
How often do you offsite?
For the first couple of years, it was every 12 months, but now every 6 months. Yeah.
Cool. Want to open it up to audience? Before I do, can I get a round of applause?
Hey, Raphael. Great talk. I guess I just wanted to know, you mentioned you got 60 calls off of those initial LinkedIn messages. I would love to know your approach to it. Were you just saying, hey, I have this hypothesis that I would like to test out with you? Or were you kind of like selling it like you've already done it before? And in terms of the hypothesis, were you sort of like, let's work on this together and see if this will actually work? Or?
Great question. I think definitely did not try to fake it till I made it. We went into it very humble. We said, we're looking to learn. I think in one of the A/B tests that we did, I literally said, this is not a sales message. I just want to learn. And it was a crisp message that said, if I made your franchisee's life as simple as sending a text message and getting answers, would you care? And could you hop on a 15-minute call? Just want to learn, right? That's what ended up working. But we also did some really tactical things. I tapped into my network. So talking about community, the first space I went was my Rotman MBA alum network, and I found a bunch of franchise execs and folks that even went on to be founders of franchise brands like Chatime and Toronto. That's who I hit up first to get my initial pulse, and then we A/B tested the campaign. Very, very humble, very like, let's learn. And what's interesting about that, and I think we've done that with actually even fundraising, where we said, hey, we just want to go like get a pulse from the market on what we're building, where we're going, what you'd need to see. And oftentimes, whether that was sales or fundraising, that quickly snowballs, right? Because you pique the interest, they kind of lean in. You're staying true to that. You're not trying to sell them anything on the call, but they're then willing to engage, build with you, and that's how the pilots came about.
Over there.
Hi, thank you for sharing your story. Amazing journey. I wanted to know, how do you stay ahead and keep innovating as you grow, like making those feedback loops like shorter and shorter and quicker for your clients as you at the same time like are managing like that growth and more clients?
I love that question. It is something that we honestly struggle with. There's a lot that we want to do as part of our vision because of what we're seeing in the market, and the just the raw nature of AI changing allows us to do a lot more, which is interesting. But what we've tried to do is just stay super close to the customer, right? So it's still founder-led sales. It's still founder-led customer success. We are in every call, right? I am selling to every customer. My COO, Shrey, is in every launch that we're doing with franchisees. And so that live pulse and feedback is super important. But we also productized it. So every answer that our AI provides, users can provide feedback, right? So we don't hide or dissuade from it. If it's negative feedback, it's negative feedback. But we built workflows where it goes directly into our Slack, where both our engineering product and all of us know immediately what that looks like, and we're jumping into it. The caution there is there's going to be a lot of feedback, and prioritization is going to be key. So we did build some thoughtful kind of stand-ups and workflows where we come and do a prioritization exercise where engineering, product, and myself were all talking and figuring out on a week-by-week basis. The end to that question, though, is you can't rely just on the feedback, right? I think we're already looking at what's happening on the meta space in terms of where OpenAI and Anthropic are going with things like MCP and connectors. And we fundamentally believe that our world is going to get disrupted. So whatever we think is a moat today is not going to be a moat in a year or two. So as founders, even today morning, Shrey and I were having that conversation where we're like, hey, OpenAI is going to make an announcement. What do we think we're going to look like in 3 years, and how do we need to get ready, right? So staying ahead of it and just being honest about where the world is going and not too optimistic, I think is probably a good thing to do. Yeah.
Can we get a round of applause? That was awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.